All right, Logan, everybody, welcome back to Airbus 320 Tech Talk. What do all those buttons do? Thank you again so much for joining me. The topic of today's discussion is going to be the clock inside the A320 flight deck there. But as always, before we get started, if you like what you're hearing and seeing, please hit the like button, leave comments down below, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, that kind of good stuff. Just helps me out immensely. So thank you so much if you've done so already. So I'll go ahead and bring up the slide that we're going to talk about today. Now, right off the bat, I know what you're probably thinking to yourself. This is probably going to be one of the most boring discussions we've had. You're probably wondering, what the heck else I can really tell you that's interesting about the clock here. So we're obviously going to go over all the obvious stuff and the buttons and everything, and we'll talk a little bit about those. But I just wanted to shed a little bit of light. I think there's a few things about this clock specifically that not a lot of people think of or know about really, and I just find them to be somewhat interesting to know other than the normal stuff that meets the eye. So with that being said, the very first thing I want to tell you about this clock specifically is it's actually more than just meets the eye as far as outputting data that we can look at and see. This clock is actually a receiving unit in the sense that the plane or the clock specifically picks up a GPS signal actually that is the GPS signal has a timestamp and a time signal that's actually broadcasted with it. So this is a highly precise, and it's this coordinated signal that the whole of the world essentially is operating off of. So it's the way that the aircraft is physically getting beamed right into it, the real time, most up-to-date, accurate, precise time signal from the GPS network of satellites once again. So it's interesting because this clock actually it intakes that signal, and then it routes it out to the other systems in the airplane that need to know about it. So most specifically the FMGS, of course, is one of the main systems that uses it. But there's also a few other little things that the airplane is using for it needs a time signal to operate with appropriately. So just kind of an interesting thing there. I don't think most people really understand when they look at the clock here. So let's just go right quick and dirty right down the face of the unit here. We'll talk about everything. So up at the top, the first section we see here is this little CHR, and that stands for chronometer. It's really just like a stopwatch that you can use. And the interesting thing is this chronometer doesn't really tend to get used a lot because on each side, the captain and the first officer both have a chrono watch that they can use on their nav display there, and there's the reset button on the glare shield there. If you remember that discussion, if you're curious about that, go back and watch the glare shield section there. I mentioned that a little bit more if you're curious about how that works or what it does. But as I said, because of the fact that you've each got a chronometer a little bit closer in proximity, let's say, to your reach of your hands, it's just easier to, if the one person wants to start a timer at a certain point, they can do so on their own side. It doesn't really interfere with what the other guy is looking at or seeing. So just an interesting thing to mention to you. But very simply, the right hand side here, the button is just a start and stop button essentially, and then the RST, of course, is a reset. One other really neat little bonus thing I can tell you, even a lot of people that fly the airplane don't know about this, but if you actually press the reset and the chronometer button at the same time, it zeroes everything out and it closes the display of the last recorded time, and they're off the screen there. So it's kind of a little interesting thing, kind of a nerdy detail, I guess you'd say. Let's see, the next window down there, of course, we have UTC, or Universal Time Coordinated. Now, I'm sure, most everybody watching this channel, you guys know that aviation lives and dies by the UTC, Coordinated Time Clock there, so not really much more to tell you about there. But, of course, this is, for those of you that don't know, the Greenwich Mean Time or Zulu Time, UTC time, is just, the world has chosen to operate, off of, think of it like one time zone. So everybody says, we're all going to set our clocks and just make reference to this one specific UTC time there. So we're always looking at UTC time in the airplane. Now, an interesting thing here on the left-hand side, we actually have a date button. If you were to press that date button down and to press it, the display here would actually change to show the month, the day, and the year. So interesting enough, a lot of the captains seem to use this button every time they're making a maintenance log entry, and they just want to double check they're writing the right date on the maintenance log there. They're always, all the guys that I fly with, for whatever reason, they're just all in the habit of reaching over and using this date function there. So kind of a neat thing to have. And then also co-located with this date button, essentially, you can see here it says set. Now what that's all about, on the right-hand side here, let's talk a little bit about what these indications mean. Now, of course, when you leave the little knob pointed in the up direction here on GPS, we're just telling the plane, hey, I want to see what the GPS time signal output display is here. And that's most of the time we're just the clock always stays in this GPS mode here. But if you wanted to go ahead and switch to this INT, this actually means internal time. So if you think about this, the way that the plane works, it's always, of course, looking at what the GPS time is. But if for some reason it lost a GPS signal, it doesn't have anything else to go off of, it stores like the last known time position, and it has like an internalized time readout. And of course, it can, start counting, forward, and it keeps time essentially internally, if you will, just specifically as the name implies. So if for some reason you wanted to set that internal time to something different, if for some reason it got off and you needed to reset it and you had a reference to do so, you could actually turn the knob all the way down to the set position, and then you would use this button over here to make a specific setting about the hour, time, or the hour, the minute, and second, everything you wanted to set the clock to. So kind of an interesting thing there. I don't think a lot of people know about that. And then on the very bottom we have this ET, and it just stands for elapsed time. And this is a window down here that most of the time it's actually kind of a technique thing. It's not really spelled out in any of our manuals. I'm not sure if other air carriers use this routinely, but it seems to be like I said, a technique thing that most people like to use. But it just keeps an elapsed time from the essentially the point in time when you told the thing to run. So basically the way this works is, we just have a run position, a stop position, and a reset position. So when we roll out on the runway and we get the takeoff clearance, most of the time the captain will reach over and he'll just put it to the run position. That starts the elapsed time that we've been conducting this flight, or the time that we started takeoff essentially. And it's just kind of a handy thing to have. The FMS will show you all sorts of different breakdowns as far as the point in time where you are, where your flight is, all your nav points, your fuel, all this kind of interesting stuff. But it's kind of an interesting, just a nice situational awareness, like a snapshot thing, just to always be looking at, hey, how long have we been in the air for? How much longer do we have to go? It's just there staring you in the face. So very simply, after the flight is all done with, usually at the conclusion of it, when you're getting ready to disembark the airplane, you'll just hit the reset and just leave the window blank there for the next crew, so it's nice and clean. So that's pretty much all I could think to tell you guys about the clock there. If you have any questions about how else we use this thing in the real world, or just any other specifics, please leave some comments down in the section there. And if you do want to show some support, head over to the Teespring store there. I've been trying to sell some t-shirts so you can pick up your bus driver gear down there. I'd appreciate it if you're interested. So hope you guys are having a great day. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll talk again real soon. Bye-bye.